This video is to review the exponent rules of 0, negative, and multiplication. So remember we have x to the 0, or anything to the 0, that is always going to equal 1. So x to the 0, that whole 0 applies to it, so it is equal to 1. In our next one, we have a negative exponent, so we are going to move to the denominator. So x to the negative 7th is over 1. We're going to take that quantity and move it below. So that gets us 1 over x to the 7th power. So in our next one, because it's in the bottom, we are going to move to the numerator. So if I have 1 over x to the negative 4th, I'm going to move it to the top of the fraction, which is the numerator. So we get x to the 4th. When we have bases that are the same with exponents, we are going to add the exponents. So x to the 9 times x to the 5th becomes x to the 9 plus 5, which gets us x to the 14th. When our exponents are separated by parentheses, we are going to multiply the exponents. So in this case, we have x to the 7 times 3, which gets us 21. When there are multiple bases, we are still going to multiply the exponents for each base. So in this case, x to the 4th, y to the 2nd to the 5th power becomes x to the 4 times 5, and y to the 2 times 5, which gets us y to the 20th, or x to the 20th, and y to the 10th. So let's use these rules to complete some practice problems. So in the first one, we have negative 12 to the 0 power. So the negative 12, the 0 only applies to the 12, so it's really negative 1 times what would turn into 0, which would get us negative 1. In number 2, because of the parentheses, it applies to everything, so it just becomes 1. And in number 3, 14v to the 0, the exponent only applies to the v, so we have 14 times 1, which gets us 14. In number 4, we have 14 over w to the negative 3, so we're going to take this variable and move it up with the 14, so it becomes 14 w to the 3rd. In number 5, there's only one negative exponent here, the h. So only the h is going to move to the denominator, but the j stays on top. So we have j to the 4th over h to the 9th. In number 6, there are two negative exponents. So the n is going to move down, the p is going to move up, and the m is going to stay on top. So it becomes m to the 3rd, p to the 5th over n to the 9th. Make sure to take out that negative sign when you move it, and it becomes positive. In number 7, there are multiple bases with x, so we're going to add these exponents. We have x to the 9th plus negative 4 plus 5, which gets us x to the 10th. In number 8, these two numbers that do not have exponents are going to multiply together, and then we're going to add our exponents. We have negative 4 times 8, g to the 11 plus 4, which gets us negative 32, g to the 15th. In number 9, we have two bases here. We have p's and r's, so they are going to add their exponents respectively. So for p, we have an exponent of 7, and if there is no exponent, it's 1, so that's going to be 7 plus 1. R is 2 plus 14, so we get p to the 8th, r to the 16th. In number 10, we are going to multiply our exponents, so u to the 6 times 4 gets us u to the 24th. In 11, we have w to the 3 times 2 and h to the 5 times 2, which gets us w to the 6th, h to the 10th. In number 12, we have to be careful. That negative 3, even though it doesn't have an exponent, it's going to get the exponent from outside of the parentheses. We want to keep that number in parentheses until we evaluate. So we have negative 3 to the 4th, f to the 5 times 4, and g to the 10 times 4. Negative 3 to the 4th gets us 81, f to the 20th, g to the 40th. In 13 through 16, we're putting multiple properties together. So first, we see that we have 8 to the 0, which becomes 1. So we have 5 squared times 1. 5 squared is 25 times 1 gets us 25. In number 14, we're going to multiply the exponents. So z to the 5 times negative 4 gets us z to the negative 20th. We can't have a negative exponent, so we're going to move that to the denominator. So we have z to the 20th on the bottom. We put a 1 on top to make it a fraction. In number 15, we are going to multiply these numbers that are by themselves, and we're going to add the exponents of each variable. So we have negative 5 times negative 3, g to the 6 plus 10, and h to the negative 11 plus 4, which gets us 15, g to the 16th, h to the negative 11, or negative 7th. Because h is a negative exponent, that is the only thing that's going to move. So we have 15, g to the 16th over h to the 7th. In number 16, this 2 exponent needs to go to both things in parentheses. So we have 4 squared g to the 5, d to the 5 times 2 times 7 d to the 6th. So that gets us 16 d to the 10th times 7 d to the 6th. 16 and 7 can multiply together, and we can add the exponents of the d. So we get 16 times 7, which is 112, d to the 10 plus 6, which gets us d to the 16th.